This is TV 10 and 55 Focus, a program dealing with issues affecting everyone on Long Island and the tri-state area. Now your host, Richard Rose.
Hi, I'm Richard Rose, and welcome to Focus. Today our guest is State Senator Lee Zeldin. He's a Republican from Shirley, representing Islip and Brookhaven, and welcome to the show, Senator.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and we're going to talk about the repeal, or the great amount of repeal, of the MTA employer payroll tax that was hated by so many people on Long Island, that you were instrumental in helping to have scaled greatly back, and in many ways was responsible for your initial election about a year and a half ago when you unseated, I guess, Brian Foley, right? And the anger about Democrats having passed in the first place a payroll tax that suburbanites like Long Islanders were paying to help fund the MTA. So tell us a little bit about how you feel about the fact that there was this grand deal to scale back the MTA employer payroll tax.
Oh, we're so excited. But when I was running for office and we're talking about this tax on jobs in the height of a recession in 2009, it was affecting all of us throughout the 3rd Senate District, across Long Island. It shouldn't have been created in the first place, and we knew while it shouldn't have been created, it was there. It's a lot easier for Albany to create a tax than to get rid of it.
Well, first of all, for people who may not be familiar with it, because not everyone runs a business, but explain what was the MTA employer payroll tax and who did it affect?
Well, the MTA payroll tax, it was a tax on jobs on payroll. 34 cents of every $100 for employers that are within the 12-county MTA region, which includes Nassau and Suffolk, of course. And it was paid quarterly by all of these employers.
Hundreds of thousands of employers.
Hundreds of thousands of employers having to pay this tax. And the fact is the MTA needed a bailout from Albany. We heard a lot about bailouts down in Washington. This was Albany's way of giving out a bailout to the MTA. And there wasn't much talk about the MTA being a little more efficient. But how could the MTA can do a better job balancing its books?
Yeah, because initially there was talk about raising the tolls on the tunnel entrances and the bridges and every imaginable toll you could think of. And that got knocked down by the strength of, I guess, city Democrats, to be honest. And then the next thing you know, it was a payroll tax on suburbs where many people didn't even use the MTA system, especially, say, Suffolk County.
That's right. We have so many employers, their employees don't even use the MTA to get to work. Yet they're paying just as much in the MTA payroll tax, or they were, as those in Suffolk, in New York City, where everyone was using the MTA every day.
And then we saw the tolls go up anyway.
And then tolls went up anyway.
So, I mean, it really was frustrating, and people were paying this tax, tolls go up anyway, and then out of the blue, because nobody really thought this was even possible, a grand deal is struck between Senate Republicans, Senate Leader Dean Skelos, and folks like you who supported anything that would remove this much despised tax, and Governor Cuomo on a means of removing this tax for, I guess, about 80% of the businesses that were paying it, and giving everybody a tax break, mostly in the middle class, and even the governor claiming it's a tax break for everyone, because at the very top, the people making millions, even they would get a tiny tax cut based on the income tax surcharge they've been paying the last few years because of the recession.
That's right. Every person is going to be paying less income taxes to New York State in 2012 than they were in 2011. And for the MTA payroll tax, over 80% of the people that were paying it are seeing a complete elimination. Over 700,000 employers. I'm just thrilled. Every day that I've been up in Albany, I've been trying to find a way to get an edge to advance this issue further. And Senator Skelos and all my colleagues in the Senate have been very focused in assisting on the effort. When we were in Albany in June, I was talking to Governor Cuomo and Lieutenant Governor Duffy.
So you were having direct conversations with them.
I spoke to them at the governor's mansion one night, and Governor Cuomo he seemed focused. I feel like he is a partner in our efforts to get this economy working, to get people working, to get New York State functioning better.
So you're giving him credit for this deal?
Yeah, no question. Governor Cuomo's leadership, his partnership with Senator Skelos. They've been working together all year long to move the state forward, and importantly, to move Long Island forward.
It stands in stark contrast to what goes on in Washington. Do you feel that way too?
No question. We have a balance of power in Albany, just like we have a balance of power down in D.C. But the partisan bickering down in Washington is destroying the country. That's not what people want. When they elect representatives, whether they're sending them to Hop Hog or Albany or D.C., They want those representatives to represent them, their families, as best as possible. But they don't want to see partisan bickering to the point where you're destroying a level of government. And that's why so many more people have more faith that our state is back on the right track. It's because we work together across the lines, across different geographical parts of the state. We work together to try to move the state forward.
All right, so who got exempted from paying this tax now, and who still has to pay the tax?
Well, those employers with payrolls under 1.25 million saw a complete elimination.
So smaller businesces.
Are
not
small
gonna pay this
businesses all
anymore.
across Long Island, the downtowns, my district of Sayville and Patchogue, and across Long Island and Port Jefferson and elsewhere, every single small business is affected. There was a reduction for those making above 1.25 million. Depending on how much is what governs how much the reduction is, up to 1.75. Self-employed businesses that have incomes less than 50,000, so a complete elimination.
And school districts?
Very importantly, all schools, both public and private, including BOCES and 4201 schools, they all saw a complete elimination, which, as we focus on mandate relief, relieving the burdens on these local governments and improving our schools and allowing our schools to run more efficiently to provide a quality education for our kids. This is money that is kept in the pockets of property taxpayers.
But now you still have, I guess, government, county, local governments, I believe, are still paying this. Hospitals, libraries. Am I right about that?
Right. We have 80% of those that were paying it saw complete elimination, and now we just continue the effort to work on the other 20%. And for all of those local representatives that, whether it's a town or the county, hopefully they're very happy for the fact that all of their small businesses are seeing an elimination of this payroll tax. And I think that, that's the great thing for all of us to be happy about, because we all have the job, no matter what level of government we are at, to represent the people that we serve. And fortunately for them, here on Long Island, they're seeing this relief.
What are the prospects, though, for really fully repealing it, though, considering that there's already considered to be a $1 to $2 billion budget hole still? Even when this deal was struck, the governor first said it was going to be $250 million that the state would make the MTA whole by losing this amount. Already that's crept up to $320 million. It's gone up $70 million in the projection just since that deal was struck. Is there really any opening there for being able to remove the rest of this tax?
When I was elected, people were telling me there was no way that you were going to get any repeal from the MTA payroll tax. Shelley Silver would never let it happen. We don't just have a political balance of power, we have a geographic balance of power. We need to get things done in Albany, and that requires the support of Long Islanders. And so they didn't think that we were going to be able to get the first $320 million repealed. You brought up libraries, you brought up hospitals, local governments. We need to continue the fight for those that we represent as best as we can every day. And even when they say it's impossible, you need to work as hard as you can to get things done, despite the criticism or the skepticism that may be out there.
All right, we have to take a break, but we're here with State Senator Lee Zeldin. We want to talk about how do we get this economy started. One idea is the Ronkonkoma Hub, how he'll be involved in that, and the state money that's headed that way when we return right here on Focus.
TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And welcome back. I'm Richard Rose here with our guest, State Senator Lee Zeldin, Republican from Shirley, also representing the district, Islip and Brookhaven. Describe what communities are in your district.
Well, the district goes east to Mastic Shirley, goes west to Brentwood, Central Islip, East Islip. Goes north to about the Long Island Expressway, some parts just north, some parts just south. 320,000 residents and 9 state senators across all of Long Island, and I'm one of several that gets to get the opportunity to represent a part of Suffolk County.
So it's right in the heart of Suffolk County, too, you could say.
That's right. That's true.
And, I was struck by the fact that your district did very well with the money that was awarded by the Governor's Regional Economic Council, where they're handing out a couple $100 million in economic money, I believe $200 million, and there's another round yet to come. And a big slice of it is going to go to the Ronkonkoma Hub, which is right in the heart of your district.
That's true.
And are there any other amounts of money that you see being targeted for communities?
Yeah, there are $2.5 million going towards the Heartland project in Brentwood. Uncle Wally's in Shirley got over $1 million.
Uncle Wally's is a local business that...
A local business.
Yeah.
There are a lot of businesses across the 3rd Senate District that were selected as part of the governor's regional economic development councils, and I'm excited for all the recipients and for the Ronkonkoma hub, as you mentioned. It's really important. I mean, this is such a large transit hub for railroad. It's so close to the airport, and I think that right now the way that the town of Islip and the town of Brookhaven are working together, and despite different political parties.
Right, 2 different political parties.
2 different political parties now, and but you're working together in different levels of government. It's just a great thing for Suffolk County if we're able to take this vision and see it implemented. And I give credit to all the different levels of government that really are working hard together.
Yeah, you know, it was an innovative idea. I mean, it's not that it's never been suggested before. It's just rarely ever implemented this way. It was depoliticized in many ways. They brought together experts from the academic field, from the economic field, business people, not just elected officials. It wasn't who was connected, who had the most money, who gave the most money to somebody's campaign. It clearly, it seemed to be done on the merits. Would you agree that it had worked that way?
That's from everything that I've seen in being part of the process. I've nothing but thrilled. It's just been great. I mean, the private business owners communicating with the various governmental officials, and as you mentioned, the experts, the economists, and just everyone that has different ideas, all have come to the table. Shared their ideas and fleshed out a plan that I think really is going to improve Suffolk County.
Well, I think the state realizes that Long Island is a very important economic engine, too, in order to compete with not only the rest of the states, but the rest of the world now, because that's the way our economy works. We're competing with China and, Southeast Asia. So, Long Island having unique institutions like Stony Brook University, Cold Spring Harbor Lab, Brookhaven National Lab. These are all places where innovations and inventions are occurring, and tying that better into the business community so somebody can get a $50, $60, $80, $100,000 high-tech job is a reality rather than just a dream or something that's going overseas.
That's right. We have, a lot of people remember Grumman on Long Island, and we look for what the next Grumman's going to be. What's the next industry? How is Long Island going to move into the future? And we have to constantly be changing with the times and finding new ways to create jobs. We have a great education system here in New York State, but people are getting educated and they're leaving the state because they can't afford to live here. They're finding jobs, but they're underemployed. They're not making enough.
Do you have people come up to you on the street and say, "How can you get me a job?"
Oh, all the time.
Really, just like that?
all
They don't
the
care
time.
about all these political fights. They're trying to figure out how to pay the bills.
I knocked on 12,000 doors when I was running for office, and I can't tell you how many of them said, "I'll vote for you if I could come work for you, if you get me a job in the government." And
what do you think of that when you hear that? I mean, what does that make you feel as somebody who they're really actually looking at you to help them get a job?
When people are struggling, and the families are struggling during tough times, having trouble paying their mortgage or paying their credit cards, I wish that there was some way that could help all of them. And the best thing I could do was run for office. I was honored to serve in the military. I'm still in the reserves now.
Yes, you are, right? With the Army?
I'm still with the Army Reserves.
So you serve duty, you have to fulfill certain obligations, right?
Sure, yeah. I had 9 days of duty in December, earlier, just before Christmas. And, it's an honor to serve. This is a new way of serving. I went from having the most popular job in the country, which is the American soldier, to the least popular job, which is the American politician.
Yeah, I think the media might actually be doing a little better than you.
Yeah.
As far as shows you what populy surveys are, because we're not very highly ranked
I
either.
enjoy that other suit a little bit more than this, but it's an honor to serve. And I really feel like I can make a difference. I'm one of 212 legislators. I understand my position. I just got there. But I try to make the most of it. So
yeah, because it is unfortunate. I mean, if you were to scratch the surface of most elected officials, you find that they have a noble reason why they got into this in the first place. And when you see these kind of public reactions in these low surveys, it has to be disheartening. But there's this dysfunction that fortunately lately we saw being overcome in New York. So do you understand the frustration of people out there about what they see as a lack of results?
That's why I ran. We watched what was going on up in Albany the 2 years before I got there. The city-centric one-party rule that they're looking at Long Island like an ATM machine. And here, I'm talking to Long Island business owners and families, and my daughters as they're now in kindergarten, and they're joining a public school, going to the same elementary school I did, yet the programs that are available to them are just not as significant as they were when I went through the same school district.
So what would be the number one way that tomorrow we could start creating jobs on Long Island?
Well, it's the fact is the employers have so many, their overhead, the energy costs, the healthcare costs, the insurance costs, their property taxes, they were paying the MTA payroll tax. We need a more business-friendly climate in New York State. We have one of the worst business climates in the entire country, and we've been sending a message throughout 2011 that the current government in Albany wants to make New York State more friendly to businesses. But the best thing that we can do right now to convince an employer elsewhere to move their business to New York State, or to convince an employer that's here not to move or not to close down, is just to constantly chip away on all these different facets of what's leading to such high overhead that's causing businesses to fail or leave.
Yeah, for decades it's clear that New York had the attitude that, well, if you want to operate in New York, that's the cost of doing business here. You know, Massachusetts get the slogan Taxachusetts, yet it didn't have taxes as high as New York. So do you think that has sunk in Albany?
Well, it's great right now with the current balance of power with Governor Cuomo there, and he's been very focused. His fiscal agenda has been very much in line with the Senate Republicans and the Assembly Republicans. But even though we're different political parties, it's easier to work across the line to move the state forward. It's very important when, regardless of who's running, you go into the voting booth, regardless of who's running for any level, that we look at all the candidates, any of the parties, and that it does matter who you elect into office.
Well, and when speaking of that, there's an election this year for your very job and many others, the Senate and the Assembly up in a presidential election year. What does the Senator see as the Republican Party's chances, his own re-election effort? When we return, we'll talk about that more in focus. Stay with us.
TV 10 and 55 Focus continues.
And welcome back. We're here with our guest, State Senator Lee Zeldin. And one of the things you said, Senator, when we left off was that, what is the number one thing I asked you that would help create jobs tomorrow? And you said deal with the cost of doing business. All the taxes, all the fees, all the regulations. And I know one of the things that some of your assistants were telling me about is that irks you is the saltwater fish license, I believe it is. And there was some progress made on that. Where does that whole issue stand?
Well, again, during the campaign, I said, and I still believe, that you shouldn't have to get a license and pay a fee to go saltwater fishing. When I was growing up, fishing on the Great South Bay, it was free. You didn't need to have a license.
Threw a line in the water.
You have to get a license and pay $10 to New York State. Tens of thousands of Long Islanders had to get these saltwater fishing licenses. So at the beginning of March, I introduced a bill to repeal the saltwater fishing license. By the end of March, as part of the budget deal, there was a 2-year moratorium and it was gone. So
we've been living without that money?
And those who paid it up until that point of 2011 actually got a refund. So, Governor Cuomo did an event down in Freeport back in August, and we were all there specifically with regards to this license fee. And as he said, and it's so true, some things in life should just be free. And fishing on the Great South Bay or the Long Island Sound or the Atlantic Ocean, you shouldn't worry about some police, coming over to check your license.
It really does come close to like being taxed for the air you breathe.
That's the next step.
Not to be against the idea of taxation in an appropriate way, but that's
true.
What it feels like.
That's exactly right. And they've run out of new things to tax in Albany, where I think maybe the next thing would have been the air. And it feels good to, during the campaign to say, if I'm elected, I am going to work to repeal the saltwater fishing license. And then by the end of March, it was gone. To say that I'm going to work on repealing the MTA payroll tax. And then here we are, for 80% of those that are paying it, they see a complete elimination. I think too often we elect people to office and they say one thing during election time, you never hear from them again on those issues until it's time for them to run again. And they say, oh yeah, remember how I was talking how we need to do that? Yeah, we need to do that if you reelect me. No, when you get elected that first time or that second time, when you ask someone for their vote, and then you get sworn in, you take the oath, every single day that you're in a job, you should be fulfilling those pledges and those promises. And for me, I took those particular issues very seriously.
So you're going to run again. It's up. You're up this year, right? It's 2-year term?
2-year terms. I'm up.
Now here you got a presidential year where Democrats are hoping young people will return to vote for Barack Obama, and that'll boost the turnout, because we saw kind of the usual anemic, some say pathetic turnout in this last off-year election year. But so the turnout's going to be higher. You've got Democratic registrations have been increasing over the last decades, where they're equal or ahead. And so you're in a tough environment being a Republican. How do you feel your chances stack up, though?
Well, I don't even know who my opponent is at this point.
So they won't even take you on at this point?
No, well, you know, I'm every single day since I've been elected, in a way, I've been campaigning. I've never really stopped. I go to events 7 days a week, much to the chagrin of my wife and daughters who are actually watching us in the green room.
Yes, you have twin daughters?
Twin girls, Michaela and Ariana. And you know, it's it's a 2-year term, and I don't take the trust that's placed in me for granted. I want to earn that trust and keep that trust, and that's why we've been working so hard. So whoever my opponent is, I look forward to knocking on 12,000 more doors and continuing to fight for the people that elected me in the first place.
You anticipate it could be Brian Foley in a repeat matchup?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure that whoever decides to get involved in the race, I look forward to whoever it is. I welcome them to the race. Obviously, that we're going into another legislative session in January, so that's pretty much where my focus is primarily between January and June. Next November, obviously, it'll be here faster than you know it, but you know, my main focus is I want to build on the progress of 2011. I want even more successes. And you look back at 2011, we closed a $10 billion deficit. We cut spending for the first time in 15 years. We have our nation's toughest property tax cap. It was a good year. The budget was passed on time. So,
these are all revolutionary things for New York State.
And our state is on the right track, and I want to help that.
Well, I would imagine one of the arguments that Republicans would make is that Long Island has back its regional strength, in that you have, I guess it's 9 state senators, all Republican, right? So that allows you to speak as one voice.
We stick together. We're a good team. We're well led with Senator Skelos, and we fight for Long Island. And we fight for Long Island together. We have common interests, obviously, with all of our districts being on Long Island. And not only is there that political balance in Albany, but that geographic balance is so important, because we do exist. We're out here. We're paying taxes. We deserve representation. And we send so much more to Albany and D.C. than we get back in return.
How much is that amount? I mean, that amount is quoted all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I hear figures upwards of $1 billion.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, same thing of the money that goes to D.C. And then they just give the money back in different ways.
It's because of formulas that say that we have a certain amount of wealth because the income levels are higher here, but of course there's a higher cost of living, and there's a lot of expenses that go into being eaten up by living in the suburbs.
Even though our incomes may be higher, you also have to factor in the cost of living. We're paying more in property taxes. So for those that may live upstate and they see the Long Islanders, they might be making more. There might be more people that are employed. There's a lot of people that are underemployed. There's a lot of people that are having trouble paying their mortgages.
But do you run into regional differences even within your own party? Because as you know, upstate New York is really suffering. I mean, you go to communities like Rochester and Buffalo and Syracuse, and there are some success stories, but these people they're losing population, they're losing industries. They in particular are suffering the brunt of the economic losses in this state.
Well, there's a common thread that's helping everyone. Is that if we, when we're up in Albany, are working together to close the budget deficits, to balance our books, that's a revolutionary, it's an extreme idea for D.C. to take your appropriations and your expenses and balance it out. We have their debts and deficits. You need to close them. You need to balance your books, just like families do and businesses have to do. So even though they might be in another region, we need to work together.
Well, we want to thank you for being our guest today. We'll be watching all of it. State Senator Lee Zeldin, Republican from Shirley. Thank you for being there. And thank you for being there. I'm Richard Rose. Be sure to join us next week for yet another edition of Focus.